A gleaming white uniform was pressed roughly against wet, filthy asphalt as steel handcuffs snapped tightly around gold-trimmed sleeves. When a small-town patrol officer decided to racially profile and humiliate a black Navy officer on a quiet suburban road, he believed he held all the power. He had no idea that he had just detained a high-level intelligence operative. Soon, the full fury of the Pentagon would descend upon his police station. It was deep into the night when Lieutenant Commander Donovan Pierce drove his sleek black sedan along the winding tree-lined roads of Oak Creek, Virginia, an affluent community just beyond the relentless orbit of Washington, D.C. Donovan was exhausted. His muscles ached with the deep, settling fatigue that followed an extended shift inside the windowless sub-basements of the Pentagon. He was still wearing his full-service dress whites, a pristine, expertly tailored uniform adorned with the dark gold oak leaves of his rank, a chest covered in ribbons, and the immaculate lines of a man who had devoted much of his life to the United States Navy. He had just concluded a high-stakes classified intelligence briefing with the Joint Chiefs. All he wanted was to return home to his wife, stand beneath the hot shower, and sleep. A fine rain had begun to fall, causing the streetlights to bloom into hazy halos. Donovan had set the cruise control precisely at the posted speed limit. He was a man who had lived his entire life by the rules. Then the darkness in his rearview mirror shattered. Red and blue emergency lights ignited the mist, reflecting harshly across the polished leather interior. A siren released a short, aggressive burst demanding immediate compliance. Donovan sighed, his jaw tightening slightly. He touched the brakes, activated his right turn signal, and guided the sedan smoothly onto the soft gravel shoulder. He shifted into park, turned off the engine, and lowered all four windows, a standard safety procedure he had learned long ago. Then he placed both hands at the top of the steering wheel where they could be seen clearly. In the side mirror, a police cruiser idled behind him, its high beams painfully bright. Two doors opened. Officer Calvin Rourke stepped into the rain with one hand resting heavily on his duty belt. Rourke moved with the swagger of a small-town king. A veteran of the Oak Creek Police Department, he treated his badge less like a shield and more like a weapon. Behind him walked Officer Owen Barrett, a young rookie who still appeared far too inexperienced to be carrying a firearm. Rourke approached the driver's side. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness and struck Donovan directly in the eyes. "License, registration, and proof of insurance. Now!" Rourke snapped, offering no greeting or professional courtesy. Donovan did not flinch, despite the blinding light. He answered in the calm, controlled baritone of a commanding officer accustomed to operating in chaotic environments. "Good evening, officer. My wallet is in my breast pocket, and the registration is inside the glove compartment. I will need to reach for them." Rourke kept the light fixed on Donovan's face, completely ignoring the bright white uniform, polished gold buttons, and decorated shoulder boards. "Get the documents and move slowly." Donovan moved with deliberate care, making every action obvious. He retrieved his wallet, removed his driver's license and military identification, and passed both cards through the window. Rourke snatched them from his hand. He shone the flashlight across the identification and then back at Donovan's face. A cynical smirk formed at the corner of his mouth. "Lieutenant Commander, huh? You're a long way from a ship, buddy." He studied Donovan suspiciously. "What are you doing in this neighborhood at this hour?" "I am driving home from my post at the Pentagon, officer," Donovan replied evenly. "May I ask why you stopped me?" "Your vehicle matches the description of one used in an armed robbery several towns away," Rourke lied effortlessly. It was a broad excuse he regularly used whenever he encountered someone who did not fit his narrow and prejudiced view of who belonged in Oak Creek's wealthy neighborhoods. "A black sedan," Donovan said calmly. "There are tens of thousands of black sedans throughout the Washington metropolitan area." He maintained direct eye contact. "Furthermore, this vehicle is registered to my home address, which is nearby." "I don't need your back talk," Rourke growled as he stepped closer to the door. The aggressive change in his posture was unmistakable. On the passenger side, Barrett shifted uneasily. His flashlight illuminated the immaculate creases of Donovan's uniform. "Calvin," Barrett said quietly across the roof of the sedan. "He's military. Look at the ribbons." "I don't care if he's wearing a superhero costume, Owen," Rourke shouted. His ego was now completely engaged. He looked down at Donovan again. "Get out of the vehicle." Donovan kept his hands on the steering wheel. "Officer, I have provided valid identification. I have committed no traffic violation. Under what legal justification are you ordering me to leave my vehicle?" "Because I gave you a lawful command," Rourke answered. "And should you refuse, I will drag you out of that seat." His hand dropped to his holster. The distinctive sound of the retention strap releasing echoed through the rain. Donovan analyzed the situation instantly. The isolated road, the rapidly escalating aggression in Rourke's voice, the frightened rookie standing nearby. A Navy intelligence officer understood when a situation had become volatile. More importantly, he understood that surviving the encounter had to come first. Courtrooms were where legal battles were won. Dark roads were where people died. "I am stepping out of the vehicle," Donovan said clearly, raising his hands. He opened the door slowly and stood. His imposing height and the natural authority of his dress white uniform briefly overwhelmed Rourke, causing the officer to retreat half a step. But the instinctive retreat only intensified Rourke's anger. "Turn around, face the car, put your hands behind your back," Rourke commanded as he pulled the handcuffs from his belt. "Officer Rourke," Donovan said. His voice dropped, carrying the cold authority of a man accustomed to directing operations in combat zones. "You are detaining an active-duty naval officer with top-secret security clearance without probable cause." He held the officer's gaze. "I strongly recommend that you contact your shift supervisor before making a mistake that will end your career." Rourke laughed harshly. "You think that costume frightens me? I run this town." He pointed toward the vehicle. "Turn around." Donovan complied without speaking. He placed both hands behind his back. Cold, heavy steel closed around his wrists, scraping brutally against the cuffs of his dress-white uniform. The handcuffs tightened and cut into his skin. The humiliation was immediate and visceral. The gleaming white fabric of a Navy uniform, representing a lifetime of honor, discipline, and sacrifice, was forced against the wet and dirty trunk of the sedan. Rourke searched Donovan with unnecessary aggression, striking the pockets of his tailored jacket with rough hands. "What is inside the trunk?" Rourke demanded. "Personal belongings," Donovan answered calmly, although a muscle tightened along his jaw. "And a locked government-issued briefcase." He turned his head slightly. "You do not have my consent to search the vehicle, and you do not possess the security clearance required to open that briefcase." "I don't need your permission," Rourke replied. "We have probable cause because the vehicle matches the robbery description." He looked toward Barrett. "Owen, open the trunk." Barrett hesitated. His face appeared pale beneath the flashing emergency lights. "Calvin, wait. Look at his military identification again. He is active-duty personnel assigned to the Pentagon." The rookie glanced toward the sedan. "We do not have a warrant to search the trunk, and should that truly be a government lockbox—" "Open the damn trunk, Barrett." As Barrett reluctantly reached into the car for the trunk release, Donovan spoke over his shoulder. His voice remained unnervingly calm. "Officer Barrett, should you open that trunk and attempt to defeat the biometric security system on the briefcase, you will violate federal laws protecting classified materials." Barrett stopped moving. "The Department of Defense will not consider it a misunderstanding. Your actions will be treated as espionage." The rookie's hand remained suspended above the release lever. He looked toward Rourke with genuine fear in his eyes. "Calvin, I'm not doing it. He's right. Should that case contain classified intelligence, the federal government will destroy us." Rourke's face turned an ugly shade of red. He was losing control of the encounter. His own rookie had undermined him, and the restrained man before him refused to show fear. "Fine," Rourke spat. "Tow the vehicle. We'll obtain a warrant at the station." He gestured toward the cruiser. "Put him in the back." Rourke seized Donovan roughly by the upper arm and pushed him toward the patrol car. Because Donovan's hands were cuffed behind his back, he could not properly balance himself. Rourke forced his head downward and shoved him into the cramped rear compartment. The door slammed shut, sealing Donovan inside the claustrophobic space. It smelled of stale sweat, cheap disinfectant, and dried vomit. He sat upright and drew a slow, controlled breath. His wrists throbbed. With every movement of the cruiser, the metal restraints cut more deeply into his skin. Through the grated partition, Donovan watched the two officers. Rourke drove aggressively, gripping the steering wheel while muttering about arrogant criminals playing dress-up. Barrett sat silently in the passenger seat, staring through the window and appearing physically ill. The cruiser soon entered the secured vehicle bay of the Oak Creek Police Department. Donovan was dragged from the rear seat. The rain had intensified, leaving dark stains across his white uniform. Rourke marched him through the heavy steel doors and into the harsh fluorescent light of the booking area. Behind the desk sat Sergeant Everett Sloan, an older, heavy-set man with a graying mustache. He looked up from his paperwork. His eyes widened at the sight before him. A black man wearing the flawless but rain-soaked Navy service dress white uniform, heavily decorated and locked in handcuffs, stood beside a red-faced Officer Rourke. "Good Lord, Calvin," Sloan muttered as he rose. "What is this?" "He's a suspect in the Oak Valley robbery," Rourke announced loudly. He slammed Donovan's military identification onto the booking counter. "Matches the description, refused to cooperate, and behaved evasively." Sloan studied the card and then looked toward Donovan's rank insignia. He swallowed. Calvin, the Oak Valley suspect, was wearing a red sweatshirt and driving a Honda. He raised the identification. "This man is a lieutenant commander." "He was combative," Rourke shouted, slamming his fist against the counter. "Process him, Sloan." Donovan stood perfectly straight and looked directly at the desk sergeant. When he spoke, the entire booking area became silent. "Sergeant Sloan," he said, his voice echoing against the cinder block walls, "my name is Lieutenant Commander Donovan Pierce." He raised his restrained hands slightly. "I have been unlawfully detained, assaulted, and arrested, without cause." His gaze remained unwavering. "I am invoking my right to make a telephone call, and I recommend that you permit it immediately before this police station becomes a federal crime scene." Sloan looked first at Rourke and then at Donovan. The experienced sergeant knew when an officer had crossed a fatal line. "Remove the handcuffs, Calvin," he ordered quietly. "What? Absolutely not. He's a suspect." "Take those handcuffs off him immediately," Sloan roared. Stunned by the outburst, Rourke fumbled with his keys. He stepped behind Donovan and unlocked the steel restraints. Donovan slowly brought his arms forward and rubbed his bruised, damaged wrists. He did not look at Rourke. "Telephone," Donovan said, extending one hand toward the desk. Sergeant Sloan silently pushed the heavy desk phone across the counter. Donovan did not call an attorney. He did not call his wife. Instead, he dialed a direct, secure number that bypassed the standard switchboard and connected to the private residence of his commanding officer. After a brief ring, a rough, sleep-heavy voice answered. "Prescott." "Admiral, this is Pierce," Donovan said crisply. On the other end, Vice Admiral Warren Prescott, Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence, immediately became alert. "Donovan, is the package secure?" "The briefcase is secured inside the trunk of my vehicle, Admiral," Donovan reported. "The vehicle is currently sitting unattended along Route 9. He paused. "However, I am unable to transport the package to the secure vault because I am being held at the Oak Creek Police Department." A profound and chilling silence followed. "Excuse me?" Prescott's voice lowered into a terrifying whisper. "Did you say that you were in police custody?" "Yes, sir," Donovan continued calmly. "I was stopped without cause, ordered from the vehicle, and arrested by an officer named Rourke." He looked toward the patrolman. "They attempted to search the trunk containing classified intelligence. I prevented the search, but the vehicle has been abandoned beside the highway and is awaiting a tow." The silence returned heavier than before. "Pierce," the Admiral said. Donovan could hear the older man preparing to leave. "Are you injured?" "My wrists are bruised, sir. I was handled roughly, and the uniform has been soiled." "Put the desk sergeant on the phone." Donovan lowered the receiver and looked towards Sloan. "He wants to speak with you." Sloan's hand trembled as he accepted the telephone. He cleared his throat. "Sergeant Sloan, Oak Creek Police Department." "Sergeant Sloan," the voice on the line said. It was a slow, deliberate rumble that sounded like distant artillery. "This is Vice Admiral Warren Prescott of the United States Navy." Sloan closed his eyes. "You are holding one of my senior intelligence officers on fabricated charges while highly classified federal assets remain unguarded beside a public highway because of your officer's incompetence." "Admiral, sir, I am deeply sorry. I only recently began my shift." "Be quiet and listen carefully," Prescott interrupted. The ice in his voice seemed to freeze Sloan's blood. "Do not fingerprint him. Do not place him inside a cell. Do not even look at him improperly." The Admiral continued. "A federal response team and military police are already coming to collect my officer." His voice hardened. "Should anything else happen to him, I will personally ensure that the Department of Justice dismantles your entire police department brick by brick." The call ended. Sloan slowly placed the receiver onto the cradle. Then he looked toward Rourke, who remained against the wall and was still attempting to appear defiant. "Calvin," Sloan whispered, his face pale, "you just destroyed this department." The clock on the wall seemed to move with the heavy, agonizing rhythm of an execution drum. The air inside the booking room grew thick and suffocating. Donovan Pierce remained standing in the exact place where Sloan had removed the handcuffs. He refused the offer of a chair. Instead, he stood like a silent pillar of white and gold, his eyes fixed straight ahead. Rourke paced around the room like a trapped animal. His earlier confidence had disappeared, replaced by frantic paranoia. "He's bluffing," Rourke muttered, wiping sweat from his forehead. Sloan, he's bluffing. Some man answers the telephone and claims to be an admiral. It's probably his brother or a friend. Sloan did not respond. The veteran sergeant was frantically entering Donovan's military credentials into the National Crime Information Center database. The moment he submitted the identification number, a red security warning appeared. Access was restricted beneath a flashing message. Department of Defense, high priority clearance level, restricted. He isn't bluffing, Calvin, Sloan said hollowly. You stepped on a landmine. Without warning, the heavy glass doors at the front of the precinct began to shake. Through the reinforced windows, emergency lights illuminated the rain-covered parking lot. But the vehicles outside were not ordinary patrol cruisers. Several massive black armored SUVs had mounted the curb and stopped at sharp angles, completely blocking every exit. Additional unmarked sedans arrived behind them. Before Rourke could move toward the window, the entrance doors flew open. A team of heavily armed military police officers entered the lobby. They moved with terrifying synchronized precision, wearing tactical equipment and carrying matte black rifles in a low-ready position. They did not shout. They did not issue unnecessary commands. They simply spread through the building, securing the perimeter, exits, and hallways. You can't storm into the station, Rourke shouted. His hand dropped instinctively toward his empty holster. He had secured his weapon in a lockbox before entering the booking area, a routine procedure that now left him feeling completely exposed. Stand down, officer. The command struck the room like a blade. Vice Admiral Warren Prescott strode through the doors behind the tactical team. Even at that hour, he was an imposing figure in a crisp Navy working uniform. Deep lines crossed his face, carved there by decades of high-stakes military operations. Two men in dark suits walked beside him. They were FBI special agents. Prescott's piercing gray eyes swept across the room and immediately settled on Donovan. The admiral's jaw tightened when he saw the dirt smeared across the lieutenant commander's dress whites and the dark bruises circling his wrists. "Report, Lieutenant Commander," Prescott ordered. His voice echoed across the concrete walls. Donovan delivered a flawless salute. "Sir, I was handcuffed and transported and detained without legal justification. My vehicle was abandoned on Route 9. Alpha Team has secured the vehicle," Prescott replied, returning the salute. "The asset is safe." He studied Donovan. "Are you still operational, son?" "Yes, Admiral." Rourke, still unable to comprehend the magnitude of his mistake, forced his chest outward. "Now listen, you people are interfering with an active police investigation." He pointed toward Donovan. "He matches the description of a robbery suspect." Vice Admiral Prescott slowly turned his head toward Rourke. It was the expression a man might give an insect before crushing it. "Special Agent Lang," Prescott said without breaking eye contact, "please explain the reality of this situation to this individual." The taller of the two men in suits stepped forward and displayed a gold badge. "Officer Calvin Rourke, I am Special Agent Victor Lang of the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Counterintelligence Division." His expression remained emotionless. "You are currently the subject of an active federal investigation." Rourke blinked. All color disappeared from his face. "Counterintelligence? What? I only stopped a suspect. Lang opened a leather folder. Lieutenant Commander Pierce was transporting highly classified, time-sensitive cryptographic material to the Pentagon. He looked directly at Rourke. "The material concerns a compromised domestic intelligence asset," Lang continued. "By detaining him, abandoning a vehicle containing top-secret materials, and attempting to breach a secure biometric container, you seriously disrupted an active national security operation." Sergeant Sloan gasped behind the desk. Barrett, the rookie who had followed Rourke into the booking room, looked ready to collapse. But Lang had not finished. This was the development no one inside the Oak Creek Police Department had anticipated. "Furthermore," the agent said, his voice devoid of emotion, "we have been monitoring communications connected to an organized crime syndicate operating out of Oak Valley." He removed a photograph from the folder. Intercepted communications indicated that the organization had a police officer on its payroll. Lang placed the photograph firmly on the booking counter. The image showed Rourke accepting a thick manila envelope from a known criminal associate in a diner parking lot. The officer provided the organization with patrol routes, allowing its members to commit robberies without police interference, Lang explained. He pointed toward the photograph. "You used the robbery as an excuse to stop an unfamiliar vehicle, making yourself appear productive while actively protecting the real offenders." The agent's voice remained cold. "You simply chose the worst possible vehicle on the East Coast." Rourke's knees weakened. He seized the edge of the counter to prevent himself from falling. The arrogant small-town king had been completely dismantled within moments. The precinct doors opened again. Chief Douglas Bennett stumbled inside while hurriedly fastening his uniform shirt. A frantic call from county dispatch had pulled him from bed with the warning that a federal tactical team had entered his station. Bennett stopped immediately. He stared at the military police, the FBI agents, Vice Admiral Prescott, and the bruised but composed Lieutenant Commander Pierce. "What in God's name is happening inside my station?" Chief Bennett demanded. His voice trembled. Admiral Prescott turned toward him. "Chief Bennett, I am Vice Admiral Warren Prescott." He pointed rigidly toward Rourke. "Your officer unlawfully detained a senior naval intelligence operative, endangered classified national security assets, and, according to the FBI, has been serving as a corrupt asset for a local criminal organization." Bennett looked toward Rourke. Then his eyes moved toward the photograph on the counter. His expression changed from confusion to horror and finally to white-hot fury. "Calvin," Bennett said as he stepped closer, "tell me this is a lie." Rourke opened his mouth, but only a weak and breathless stammer emerged. "Chief, I didn't know who he was. He was being disrespectful." "Disrespectful?" Donovan interrupted. His commanding voice cut through the room. He stepped forward, closing the distance between himself and Rourke. "You profiled me." His gaze sharpened. "You saw a black man driving a luxury vehicle late at night and immediately decided that I was a criminal." Donovan continued. "You ignored my military identification. You ignored my rank. You threatened to drag me from my vehicle and then assaulted me to satisfy your own ego." He turned toward Chief Bennett. "Your officer did not stop a robbery, Chief." His voice became final. "He committed a civil rights violation and compromised federal intelligence." Bennett did not hesitate. He marched toward Rourke, seized the silver badge attached to his shirt, and tore it from the uniform. "Calvin Rourke, you are fired!" Bennett shouted. His voice cracked with rage. "You are a disgrace to this badge and a disgrace to this community." Special Agent Lang stepped forward with a pair of federal handcuffs. "Calvin Rourke, you are under arrest for civil rights violations, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to commit robbery." He pointed toward the wall. "Turn around and place your hands behind your back." The irony was immediate, brutal, and poetic. Completely broken, Rourke turned around. Cold, heavy steel closed around his wrists, recreating the same painful sensation he had inflicted upon Donovan earlier. The FBI agents read Rourke his rights. His head hung in complete defeat as they escorted him from the precinct toward the armored vehicles. Officer Barrett stood trembling in the corner. Admiral Prescott walked toward him, his heavy boots echoing against the linoleum floor. "Son," Prescott said, lowering his voice into a stern but calmer register, "you knew his conduct was wrong." He looked directly at the rookie. "I listened to the dispatch recordings while traveling here. You attempted to stop him from opening the trunk." Barrett nodded quickly. Tears gathered in his eyes. "Yes, sir. I knew the stop was wrong. I'm sorry. I should have done more." "You should have," Prescott replied coldly. "A uniform does not release you from your moral responsibility." He allowed the words to settle. "Let this become the defining lesson of your career. Never follow a corrupt man blindly." Prescott turned back toward Donovan. The Admiral's rigid expression softened slightly. "Let's go home, Commander. The briefing room is waiting." "Yes, Admiral," Donovan answered. He turned and walked toward the exit. When he reached the glass doors, he paused and looked back at Sergeant Sloan and Chief Bennett. The Oak Creek Police Department was in chaos. Its corruption had been exposed, and its illusion of authority had shattered beneath the immovable force of federal power. Donovan pushed through the doors and stepped into the cool air. The rain had stopped. The lights of the tactical vehicles reflected across puddles in the parking lot. He approached the Admiral's dark armored vehicle, waiting to carry him back to the Pentagon. Donovan entered the passenger seat and settled against the leather. His wrists still throbbed. His once immaculate dress white uniform was permanently stained by dirt from the roadside. But as the convoy left the Oak Creek Police Department and the ruins of Calvin Rourke's career behind, Donovan felt an overwhelming sense of vindication. He had not broken. He had not surrendered his composure. He had relied upon his training, his intelligence, and the unbreakable brotherhood of the United States Navy. Rourke had attempted to strip away his dignity on an isolated road because he believed no one would care. Rourke had been wrong. The full power of the United States government had cared. The convoy traveled toward Washington, D.C., its dark silhouette visible on the horizon. The intelligence was secure. The corrupt officer was in chains. Lieutenant Commander Donovan Pierce was returning to work, a silent guardian operating in the shadows, unyielding and unbroken. Golden light spread across the Pentagon, a fortress that protected its own. Thank you for reading this extraordinary story of justice and resilience. Should Lieutenant Commander Pierce's calmness under pressure and the satisfying downfall of a corrupt officer have kept you on the edge of your seat, press the like button. Share the video with your friends and subscribe to the channel for more thrilling, true-to-life dramatic stories. Leave a comment describing your favorite plot twist. Goodbye.